morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Chapter 9, Genetics. We've known that kids look like their parents. We've known that traits get passed on from parents to kids and from grandparents to parents. This has long been known. It has not long been known why or how. That's a better question. How does it get transferred? How do these traits get transferred from parent to child? Gregor Mendel was a monk in the mid 1800s, so 150 plus years ago, and he was trying to discover. His goal was to discover the mechanism behind inheritance. How is it that kids look like their parents? He discovered what we call classical genetics. He discovered the basics of genetics by breeding pea plants. The peas that he did, and let's put this into perspective, he wasn't breeding pea plants just because he felt like breeding pea plants. He was a monk, so he had to provide something to the monastery, to the church, and so what he provided was food in the form of peas. But while he was doing all of this, he did some research as well. So he discovered the basic mechanisms behind genetics. It's because of him that we understand what dominant means and what recessive means, and we'll talk about all those when we get there. Understanding some terms are really important to be able to get the most out of what Mendel discovered. And the first thing we need to understand was his true breeding plants. Mendel had a number of plants that he called true breeding. And true breeding means that if I breed a purple flower plant with a purple flowered plant, their children will all have purple flowers. If I breed a white flowered plant with a white flowered plant, all of the kids will have white flowers. True breeding. We'll figure out and we'll talk about exactly how that mechanism worked later, but he did this just by sight. He went around, scoured the countryside to find particular breeds of pea plants so that he could, like I said, discover his mechanism of genetics. After he got his true breeding plants, his next plan was to cross them. I take a true breeding purple plant with a true breeding white plant and breed them together and look to see what I get. When you do that, you get what we call a hybrid. A hybrid is the result of two purebreds, two true breeding plants that have been crossed together. When you cross the plants like this, you start off with the first generation being the parent generation. And to be honest, it would be really better to call this the grandparent generation, but he called it the parent generation. So the parent generation is those true breeding plants. So we're going to replicate Mendel's experiment, and we're going to take and we're going to breed together a purple flowered plant against a white flowered plant. We know what a gene is. We know that a gene is a set of instructions for a particular trait. In this case, the gene is for flower color. There are two versions of that gene. There's the version of it that says the flower should be purple, and then there's the other version that says the flower should be white. And we're going to breed together those two versions of plants, or rather we're going to breed together plants that have those two separate versions of the gene. You also know that you have two copies of any given chromosome. You have two copies of any given gene, one that you got from your mom and one you got from your dad. So let's say that the gene for flower color is an F, and that capital F means that that flower should be purple, and that lowercase f means that the gene says the flower should be white. If my plants are true breeding, what are the genes then for flower color of my purple flowered plants, of my pea generation? Well, my pea generation, because I know they're true breeding, every time I breed these flowers together, I always get purple flowered plants. That means they have two copies of the purple gene that says their flowers should be purple. I'm going to breed those, I'm going to cross them with true breeding white. And the same scenario is true, and that is that if every single time I breed those white flowers together, I get white flowers, that means that their genes have to all be for white flowers. Because if they had different genes, then sometimes some of the kids would pop up with different colors. So they have to have the same genes if I always get, over many generations, the same result. That means that that parent generation, that P, had to have the same result. So if I cross these, we're going to make kids. And remember, in meiosis, you can only put one of your pair of genes into your sex cell. Well, it doesn't really matter on this one, does it? What gene, what is my only option? I've got to put a capital F in that egg. So mom is going to put a capital F in her egg, and I cross that with dad's sperm. Again, what is dad's option? He only has one option. That only option is a lowercase f. I can give you this lowercase f that says make a white flower. I give you that lowercase f that makes a white flower. It doesn't matter which one I give you. Both of them say the same thing, which is to have a white flower. So their kids will all have these genes. One gene that says you should have a purple flower, and one gene that says that you should have a white flower. Real question. If your genes say two different things, which ones are you going to show? You had genetics in high school or in middle school. You know which is the trait that you're going to show. You're going to show the dominant trait. We've already cheated. We did stuff that Mendel didn't know. And we've already put out that the purple is the dominant trait and that the white is the recessive trait. So if I look at this individual, it has two different colors that the flowers should be, but I know which one it's going to be. It's going to be the dominant one, and we already said the dominant one is purple. So this is my child generation. This is the F1 generation, and I just happen to pick F. My F stands for flower. That stands for something different. All right, so my F1 generation, this is my first summer. First summer, I plant these peas. Those plants came up, I crossed them together, and I got these peas at the end of the first summer. The second summer, I'm going to plant those peas. I'm going to cross together those. This is the second summer. Those together. Well, now I have a choice. And that choice is, do I give an upper or a lower for this one? And do I give an upper or lower for that one? And the answer is, well, sometimes you'll give one and sometimes you'll give other. And this is where you have to do that Punnett square. You did these, again, in high school. You know what the Punnett square is. To do that, to figure out what my possible combinations are, I draw the Punnett square. And I put my options there. And then this will tell me all of my possible combinations of these two genes. Big F plus big F means 25% of the kids will have the same genes as what this parent had. 50% of the kids will have one big and one little. One big and one little. And we'll have that genotype. And 25% of the kids will look like this, at this point, grandparent, of little f, little f. This is called a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. You're going to have one, I have to draw this down here, one big F for 2 big F, little f, per 1 little f. These are the possible combinations of all of the kids that were made this second summer. But I won't actually know what color their flowers are until I plant them that third summer. And that third summer, that's the F2 generation. And those are what we're going to see. So the P generation is the first summer. We cross the true breeders and we get hybrids. The second summer, we cross the hybrids to see what we're going to get to pop up that third summer. And this is the cross of the F1s, the F2s. So this is the kid, this is a parent, this is the grandparent. That's why I said at the beginning, we really kind of should call this one the grandparent generation, but whatever. Parent generation is the true breeders. F1 are the hybrids. F2 are the crosses of the hybrids. All right? Let's talk about this before we jump too much further, and that is, I want you to imagine what the first summer, what the fields looked like. The first summer, one field was nothing but purple flowers, and the other field was nothing but white flowers. He crossed those two fields together, and he harvested those peas, and then that's what he planted the second summer. He planted those the second summer, and if all of them have this gene, if the entire F1 have that same, what we call genotype, what color is this flower? Well, it has to be purple because it has the dominant gene of purple. And what color is that flower? Purple. So both of the fields that he planted afterwards was nothing but purple flowers. Then he crossed those two fields together again. Crossing those two fields are going to yield these kids, and as we said, grandchildren. And so then he plants these peas. Again, you can't look inside of a pea and know what genes it has. You got to plant it to see what the plant pops up looking like. He plants those flowers, and then he looks at his field. And what color is that flower? That flower right there is going to be purple because it's got the capital F's. What color are those two flowers? Well, they're also going to be purple because they also have the capital F. And what color is that flower going to be? That's the only flower that's going to be white because you have to have two of the lowercase f's, two of the recessive genes to show the recessive trait. So what he saw was a 3 to 1, what we call phenotypic ratio, which means that 75% of the flowers that he saw when he looked out across the field that third summer, 75% of them were purple. From that one and those two. And a quarter of them, 25% of them, were white. 3 to 1 phenotypic ratio, 3 to 1 purple to white flowers. 3 to 1 purple. 3 out of every 4 plants were going to have purple flowers, and 1 out of every 4 was white. 3 to 1 phenotypic ratio, 1 to 2 to 1 genotypic ratio.